The world is listening to Cher's words. On the other hand, she has now brought up the very unexpected topic of Leon Russell, one of the most mysterious and influential people in music history. What did the reigning queen of pop think of him? No one is going to tell you what to do. This interview is one that you must not miss. Okay then, I'll get right in. Before we hear Cher's thoughts on Leon Russell, however, let's examine his life and music. Leon Russell was born on April 2, 1942, as Claude Russell Bridges. He encountered difficulties even before he ever set foot on Earth. The second son of John and Hester Bridges was named Claude. The most incredible thing, according to his mother, was that he remained silent until he was in his late teens, and his first words were rather complex. "What's wrong?" "You're crying," he said, his gaze set on distant birds. Mom was in utter shock since she had never heard her son speak before. There were other distinguishing features of young Claude besides his tardiness in speaking. Because of a spinal cord injury that affected his second and third vertebrae, he was born with a kind of cerebral palsy. The right half of his body, and his hand in particular, hurt. Because 3 of his right fingers weren't working, he had to rely on his left hand. Such limitation in his fate molded him in ways he could never have imagined. Claude subsequently said, "My chops have always been weak." Nevertheless, the injury motivated him to create his own style of playing the piano. He didn't have the strength to mimic other players' skills, but he managed to create music that was entirely his own. No one could dispute Claude's undying love for music. Playing the church hymn "Trust and Obey" by ear at the age of 4 startled his mother, despite the fact that both of his parents were upright piano players. He quickly signed up for piano lessons in a nearby town, despite the almost 38-mile journey. His talents went beyond just playing the piano, however. In a flash, he could play the baritone, alto, and cornet horns. After making an impression on the band director in 5th grade, he was invited to join the high school marching band. Even as a young child, he seemed to possess an inherent aptitude for music. But it's not easy to get what you want. Claude finally gave up trying to play classical music with his hands after more than a decade of practice. Instead of trying to replicate the classical style, he should have devised new methods to do it. He found that listening to music helped him forget about his body-related anger. Despite his statement, "I felt like the world had cheated me," he acknowledged that music had provided him with a means of escape. He might have been just another small-town insurance salesman showcasing an ex-football star if the limits hadn't been in place. As Claude entered his adolescent years, music became his primary focus. He recorded his first track with fellow classmate and friend David Gates when he was 15 years old. He may have called Tulsa home, but he had bigger dreams, and the release of Joe Baby signaled the start of something much greater. To get into local pubs as a member of the Starlighters, he had to pretend to be Leon Russell and use a fake ID. This allowed him to perform underage. That name would stick with him even if he played in more seedy dives every night. Working all night and going to class all day meant there was no time to relax. He admitted, "I slept in English a lot," but said that the music more than compensated for his exhaustion. After finishing high school, it was essential to immediately begin traveling. Jerry Lee Lewis persuaded Leon to join him on tour, and Leon dropped out of college. "There was no choice. I figured this was my chance to eat in a lot of restaurants and travel around," the individual said. Although he had faced hardship in this world, music had provided him with an escape. When he arrived in Los Angeles, however, things weren't easy. Tighter liquor rules meant fewer places could stage acts. On the brink of starving, Leon was raging with hunger. He continued regardless of the fact that California wasn't the land of opportunity. He substituted himself as a session musician and kept improving his craft by studying guitar with James Burton. The time you put in at the studio was invaluable. Among Leon's many collaborators were Jan and Dean, Ricky Nelson, George Harrison, and Barbra Streisand. He was seemingly ever-present, his magical touch subtly amplifying a number of hits. Even at that tender age, Leon knew that a life of obscurity was not in his destiny. Leon may utter more than a single sound. Regardless of his inspiration, he could perform any kind of music: rock, blues, gospel, bluegrass, etc. Because of how his tragic life experiences shaped his music, it had a depth that few could match. No matter how bad things became, he always managed to turn them into musical masterpieces. For Joe Cocker, a tricky issue developed in March 1970. If he did not comply immediately, U.S. immigration officers warned deportation. Some have hypothesized that the real reason for the Rush tour was the darker danger of physical violence against Cocker. Cocker called out Leon Russell for help in forming a band due to the short notice of a 48-day trip. The task at hand was almost impossible. Due to time constraints, Russell had to frantically organize auditions and rehearse musicians. The final result was the musically chaotic tornado known as Mad Dogs and Englishmen, which characterized a pivotal era in rock history. Russell had two tasks: find a 10-piece band and find 10 backup singers for the space choir. In the midst of all the chaos, Russell took authority. Due to his impairment caused by the drugs, Cocker could not be led. While Russell asked, "Does the music sound right?" Cocker finally said, "It never sounds right to me," showing her bewilderment. Russell chose to go it alone, with the thought, "I'll just do whatever I want." He went ahead and did just that. Members of both Delaney's and Bonnie Bramlett's bands were gathered by Russell. He planned a raw and unvarnished trip. According to tour singer Claudia Lanier, Russell has a one-of-a-kind skill. He could fuse white and black gospel genres, creating a sound of his own. Although some may have missed it, Elton John saw something on the performance DVD of the Mad Dogs and Englishmen that others forgot. He said that, while Joe had incredible vocal talent, the band really belonged to Leon. Russell, donning a top hat and a basketball jersey he had scavenged from a thrift store, was a natural performer. His command of the music was palpable, and he commanded attention. "I'm an actor," the actor said. "I was just trying to make a show." At the same time as he was performing live, Russell was busy in the studio working on his 1970 solo album, Leon Russell. Guests on the record included iconic artists like Mick Jagger, Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Bob Dylan himself. The album included two timeless songs, A Song for You and Delta Lady. These weren't just songs, they were confessions set to music. A Song for You, a 10-minute work of art, sprang from Russell's innermost being. From all appearances, it had come from another planet. He had to admit that the rate of flow surprised him. The Carpenters and Ray Charles were among 40 artists that would cover the song. It was really Ray Charles's 1994 performance that garnered him a Grammy. The song had evolved into something more than merely Russell's creation. In contrast, Joe Cocker's Delta Lady was the first single from his Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour. The song, which dealt with love and longing, nonetheless had Russell's essence, even if the lyrics were altered in Cocker's version. Because of the unspoken suffering it depicted, it was a huge hit. The 1970s music culture couldn't have been more Russell-centric. Included in Dave Mason's Alone Together was his piano work, and he had his first hit that same year with The Letter, which included Jarrett. Elton John and Russell performed together at the Fillmore East. It was obvious that Russell had moved up the acting ladder from supporting actor to emerging star. His performances were as natural, unscripted, and uncensored as the man himself. During the 1971 concert for Bangladesh, George Harrison invited Russell to join the stage. It was a watershed moment in Russell's career. He played piano harmony with Harrison and Bob Dylan and joined them on bass. That performance further cemented Russell's place in music history. The charity CD that was created from it won the 1973 Grammy for CD of the Year. The 1970s were jam-packed with performances, band tours, and recording sessions. There came the release of Leon Russell and the Shelter People, Leon Russell's first gold record. Under the alias Hank Wilson, he experimented with country music and worked with blues great Freddie King. Because he was never content to perform just one kind of music, he really was multi-talented. Throughout his career, Russell achieved a great deal outside the realm of music. Famous musicians like Eric Clapton and Willie Nelson were recorded at the Church Studio, which was part of his Oklahoma real estate portfolio. Even though Russell was so against the documentary that he kept it hidden from the public for 40 years, the production of A Poem is a Naked Person was an exciting period in his career. After reconsidering, Russell chose to distribute the film. Next up was Hank Wilson, Russell's country character who drew inspiration from the music listened at truck stops while traveling. A little attempt with country music turned into a lot more. Although Russell's first song, Rollin' My Sweet Baby's Arms, did not achieve massive popularity, his 1973 album Hank Wilson's Back Volume 1 was a huge hit. Taking a humorous vacation from a career that had its share of low points was a welcome change. Russell had an impression on the music business via more than just his albums. In addition to his work with the Gap Band, he played a key role in the creation of Linn drum machines. The improvements he pioneered in rhythm and swing timing were the instruments that shook up the music business. His ability to foresee challenges and devise novel solutions to leave his mark was extraordinary. In the 1980s, Leon Russell's life was full of ups and downs. Among other famous people, he contributed to the We Belong Together commercial that aired on ABC. The dynamic character of television was mirrored in this commercial tune. Despite his meteoric rise to fame in America, he never wavered in his commitment to performing live. He turned his life into a traveling career. Throughout the most of the first part of that decade, he and Newgrass Revival were always on the go. With this peculiar yet fruitful collaboration, country and rock were no longer distinct genres. In 1982, on May 1st, Russell debuted in Texas at Joe Ely's third annual Tornado Jam. His performance, along with those of other bands like Joan Jett and the Crickets, captivated the 25,000 strong crowd. Like the lives of the audience members were hanging in the balance, Russell poured his heart and everything into every performance. That was his way, he said. That was the only way he knew. Despite his busy schedule, Russell persisted in releasing songs even as the music industry evolved around him. The publishing of his second book, Hank Wilson Volume 2, with its distinct country flavor, revealed that he had reverted to his alter ego. Leon, who had a magnetic stage presence, was that endearing cowboy who played piano and could move between honky-tonk and gospel. The next album was Solid State, a blues record made in Tennessee. As always, Russell was exploring sonic worlds that refused to be labeled, effortlessly moving between many genres of music. By 1985, Russell had resumed his travels, driven by an indomitable energy. Additionally, same year he released Best of Leon Russell, A Song for You, a memoir detailing his intriguing and complex life story. In spite of this, even while he was performing his most popular songs, Russell was relentless. They even shared a stage with Edgar Winter, and their performances won over crowds throughout North America. Together, Winter's wildfire and Russell's serene, heartfelt music formed an unbreakable bond. Although his output had slowed in the 1990s, Russell had not stopped creating. He added nuance to well-known melodies by rearranging old songs. He resurfaced in 1991 with Bruce Hornsby's help and released Anything Can Happen. He didn't exactly make an effort to market it. Leon was content to let his music do the talking, as he was never one to want praise. By the mid-1990s, Russell had become a more reflective figure. As his record label got rolling, he released an instrumental album titled Hymns of Christmas, which he deemed a tribute to his gospel background. Yet even as he thought back on it, the past persisted in troubling him. On the 1998 CD, Legend in My Time, Hank Wilson Volume 3, he breathed new life into the legendary singer, reviving his career after all those years of disappointment. Though many people stopped paying attention to Leon Russell in the 2000s, his music nevertheless had a profound impact on those who loved it. Whether he was performing at a large festival or a small private location, his passion was contagious. His obsession with being famous had given way to his passion for music. However, his condition began to worsen as time passed. In the 2010s, Russell's career took a dramatic turn. The man who had opened for him before, Elton John, reached out to him to suggest working together. They released a hopeful album in 2010, The Union, during Russell's last years. Russell gave it his best despite battling illness for the album, and it won him his 6th gold record. It was evident that Leon Russell's heart still had the capacity to contain music, despite the passage of time. Despite suffering from heart failure and requiring surgery, Russell persisted in performing until his latter years, when the weight of the stage and the piano keys became more noticeable. To the announcement of the encore on November 13, 2016, he persisted in touring despite the pain. Leon Russell had passed away. Leon Russell has close pals with the Wrecking Crew. So, in this reunion interview, Cher discusses what Leon Russell did. Leon Russell was a modest man, she remembered. Leon, as Cher remembers him, never once screamed boo at anybody. Continuing, she said, he'd just come in, play his piano, and that was it. She went on to describe an incident when things went awry and Leon arrived at work very drunk. I mean, so drunk she was amazed. After that, he sat at the piano, and for once he was talking, which was a rare sight. Everyone was looking at him like, "Did you see Leon? Did you see him?" Cher said with a chuckle. The lead vocalist claims that although Leon was entertaining, none of this was expected. Before the class started, Phil, the leader, was ready to calm everyone down once the laughing died down. Cher also remembered Phil's look as he asked Leon, "Leon, have you ever heard of the word respect?" This was the moment that left everyone gasping for air. From the piano, Leon shouted out, "Phil, have you ever heard of the word respect?" as he resumed drinking. Everyone lost their minds. People were giggling so hard that they were crying and rolling around on the floor. For 30 minutes, they had to collect themselves. Cher recalled feeling a mix of amazement and happiness. Later on, trombonist Lou McCree reminisced about an earlier Leon, a rural kid from Oklahoma who, upon coming to town, lived in a rundown motel on Sunset Boulevard. Loitering around the studios and grabbing gigs when he came across them was his strategy before he had a phone. In his contribution, Lou said, "We told him, Leon, if you want to work in this town, you need a phone." In response, Leon grinned and shook his head. But that was Leon, real country. Next up was Tommy Tedesco, who plays guitar for the Wrecking Crew. He brought up an event that happened during Leon's treatment with Glenn Campbell. There, Leon started to panic since he felt so out of character. Keeping his cool, Glenn told Leon, "Leon, play that stuff you did in Oklahoma. They don't know anything here." And so Leon obeyed. His unique playing style became apparent to everyone when he did things his own way, and he never lost it. Since then, Leon's piano abilities have left drummer Hal Blaine in amazement. He had this magical quality, Hal recalled. Even Larry Levine couldn't help but rave over Leon, whose down-home Southern-style piano playing was nothing short of breathtaking. In his memory, he saw Leon and Al DeLore playing electric piano together, completely filling the room. Following that, the King's music left Larry in awe as Leon transitioned to an acoustic style. Leon had hands that could reach octaves. "You can't beat that," he pointed out. Leon had something that couldn't be taught because music was in his bones, in every note he touched. At last, Julius Retcher drew a memory of a night when an 80-piece orchestra welcomed Leon. Leon still couldn't make it, even though 8 o'clock was looming on the horizon. At a moment when anxiety was building, the door swung open with a creak. Leon stomped, entered the room as usual, and slowly approached the piano. An eerie stillness descended. Ben Barrett's severe and abrupt voice resounded into the booth before Leon could begin playing. "Leon, don't you ever be late again." Leon was mute. Without ever touching the keys, he stood up, shut the piano, and limped out of the room. As he left, the room fell into an eerie silence. There was something about Leon that drove him follow his heart no matter the cost. No one in the band, not even the other members, could contain their admiration for Leon Russell and his remarkable life narrative. Do you not think that a rejuvenated Leon Russell will reestablish himself on stage and light it on fire, even if the world may never see another figure like Leon? If you have an opinion on it, you may subscribe to my channel and post a comment.